it's not enough to know how to tie a knot, you have to know how to apply that knot in the right way. For every problem that you have to be able to match up the right kind of knot. Do you need something that slides tight against something? Do you need something that's going to secure a bundle? Do you need to tie two ropes together? Do you need to tie a rope to an object? And if you know what it is you're trying to do, then you can match it to the right knot. All right, let's talk about the overhand knot. It's the most basic form of any knot. It's that knot that you get in your extension cord or in your hose without meaning to. So, what good is it? What can you use it for? Well, the overhand knot is called a stopper knot, or it's in a category it's called stopper knot. So, in this case, for example, I have a hole in a board, and let's say you're making a swing set, and you have a rope going through it, and you want it to not be able to go through. It's perfect for that. Now, the overhand knot itself, one of the flaws to it is if you put a lot of weight on it, it cinches down really tight and makes it very difficult to untie. So if it's in a situation like I was saying on the swing set where you don't want it to come undone, that might actually be really good. But if it's in a situation where you want it to be temporary, you're going to want to do a slip knot. So here we have the same form as an overhand knot, but with a loop. So it still stops, just like that. But later, you can just pull on that loop and it comes undone. Now there are other stopper knots. For example, a slight modification in the figure eight. Figure eight's a great stopper knot. And one of the things that makes it good, as opposed to a overhand knot, is that it is easier to untie. Because it has that kind of extra twist in it, it makes it it's easier to loosen up afterwards. So any situation where you need a rope to go through and then not go out, like let's say for example you break a shoelace and it's too short to be able to tie a bow, you could do a stopper knot at the very top, the top eye of your shoe, to keep it from coming out. So you can tighten it down as much as you need and then put a stopper knot in there. So there is a variation to the slip knot. The one that I just showed you, this one, which is essentially a temporary stopper knot or a temporary overhand knot. And the end that slips is the short end, right there. This end, the long working end, or not the working end, the other end doesn't slip. And you just pull it like that to loosen it. Now, if you tie it the other way, so that the short end is the end that doesn't slip, you've created what's called a simple noose. And this can be really useful for like a snare, or if you want to secure around something. If it's going to be under tension, you want something that's going to slide to hold tight against something, but will be able to be released or loosened after. So those are the two forms of the slip knot. All right, let's talk about the square knot. The square knot is in a category called a binding knot. So binding knots are very strong, are used to bind things together. So imagine like a bundle of sticks, and you want to hold it all together. A binding knot is great, so you would tie essentially what is an overhand knot around it to cinch it all together, and then the second one over the top of it holds the first one in place. And so if the first one begins to slip, it just tightens the second one. And so that works well to bind things together. That's its strength. Its strength is in this way. Its strength is not in this way. As you see, if you pull on these two, it just comes right apart. That, and then it'll slip out. So in understanding the knot's strength, you can understand how to apply it. There's a category of knot called bends. For example, the sheep bend, or the double fisherman's knot is another example of a bend. Bend knots are for combining two different kinds of rope, or linking them up. So here's a quick tip on the sheep bend. If you have two different thicknesses of rope, you want to use the thick one to do the U loop that has the least amount of movement. So, and then the other one, you wrap around it like that. So these knots are best for combining two different kinds of rope, or just combining two ropes. You can do this one with the same thickness of rope as well. And the double fisherman's knot, the way it functions as you cinch, it basically is two knots that slide together. So we have these two, and as they slide together, they tighten on each other, and it joins those ropes together. In addition, on the double fisherman's knot, you can do additional loops. I've done 2 on each one of these knots. You could do 3 if you want to, just if you're concerned about it slipping. You can do 1 as well, but the more loops you have, the more friction it's going to have, and the more secure it'll be. Another category of knot is the fixed loop. For example, the figure 8 or the bowline are both fixed loops. And this comes in extremely handy in a case where you want a loop that's not going to cinch down. For example, they use this one a lot in rock climbing, where you want to hook a carabiner to a loop. You don't want that knot to cinch down onto the carabiner. You just want it to attach like that. And this is also a knot that's very easy to untie after the fact, even if you've put your whole body weight onto it. So, for example, another use for the like the bowline, if you were in a situation where someone had lowered you a rope and you need to they're going to pull you back up, you wouldn't want something that would cinch down around your waist as they pull you up. And so the bowline is a good example of what to use for that. Nice fixed loop. The alpine butterfly is a really cool fixed loop. It's a little bit different in the sense that you make it in the center of a rope. So a lot of ropes, you have to have access to the end of it to make that loop, like the figure 8 loop or a bowline. You can't tie it in the middle of a rope. But the alpine butterfly, you can. And this is really cool because if you wanted to tie several of them in a row, you could, to make kind of utility loops and hang things from it. You could make a ladder like this. Or one of the ways that it's used in rock climbing, if you're descending a rope and then you come to a spot that has some damage to the rope where you don't trust your weight on it, you can tie one of these and put the damaged part right in the middle of the loop here, and then the weight goes around it, so you can be safe in descending past that point, knowing that the damage is isolated. The category of knot called a hitch is used to attach a rope to an object. For example, let's say you're trying to tie a rope around a tree to hold something in place, like like you're creating a line to attach a tarp to for a shelter or something. One end using 2 half hitches like this would be really great. It cinches, it slides, so you could tie it out here and then it will cinch down to secure firmly against the tree. And the more weight you put into it, the tighter it'll cinch. It stays very securely and firmly. So that's one hitch. Another hitch is called the clove hitch. The clove hitch is a very important knot because it is the beginning and the ending knot in most pioneering projects, like lashing. If you're gonna make a tripod, you're gonna start with this. So the thing about the clove hitch, a couple things. It works best on a round object, like a post or a tree. But a square object, it doesn't have enough friction on just the edges to be able to hold securely. The other thing about it is it holds firmly, but only in one direction. You see the rope comes around here and goes out this way. That's where it's strong. It's pulling against that. If you pull back this way, you can see it just came apart. So, if you are, like, let's say you need to tie something to a post, but the rope might be going around here like this, like if you're tying an animal to a post, this probably is not going to be the choice you're going to go with. You'd want to go with 2 half hitches in that case. One of my favorite hitches is the taut line hitch. The cool thing about this one is that you can see it creates a bend or a kink within the rope here. So where you tie it, it will stay tight until you loosen it. So it'll stay in place, which is great. So like I was saying, you could tie 2 half hitches to the end of one rope to create a tight, like a clothesline, for example. And then the other end, you would use a taut line hitch, and then you can cinch it as tight as it needed to be that way by taking out slack, and it'll stay in place. But it also easily moves when you take the pressure off. Really, really useful knot.